we're live, Lynn, so when you go back in there, don't go down the middle aisle. Okay? All right. Hello, everybody.
Hello.
Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful to be back. You know, you often take for granted the things that we enjoy about our country, like brushing your teeth with our water, flushing toilet paper, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Even though we may get frustrated with drivers on the road, what seems to be some system of actual organization on the road. Sorry. So it is a pleasure to be back. As a reminder, we are using a new system. You've had it for a few weeks now. If you're going to respond or read, do so with a little bit of oomph, not only so the mics pick you up, but so that everybody in the house can hear what you're saying. We'll do our best to try to continue to tweak this and make this the best experience that we can for both those of us in the house and those of us who are joining with online. So welcome to those who are online. As a reminder, drop a hello to us. Let us know you're there with us. We'll try to welcome you and then moderate the discussion as we go through. If you have any questions or comments, you want to be a part of the discussion, we'll do our best to include those as well. I want to say a big thank you to Julian for holding down the fort while we were out of town, and heard things went really well. Great study. Julian's a really gifted teacher. I love having him a part of our team, don't you?
Yeah.
Amen. So, and then Pastor Ray the week before, it was great. It's always nice, not only for me to be able to be a part of the other things behind the scenes or sitting in the seats, but it's also nice that more people get to be used in their giftings and let the Lord use them in those things too. So it's been a great couple weeks, so thank you, Julian and Pastor Ray. I want to give you an update real quick in case you're wondering how our trip went. I'm sure we will share more on Sunday as the team comes together, but it was a pretty intense week. There was lots of activity. In case you're unaware of what we do when we go to the Dominican, we primarily focus on medical missions. There was 250 people connected to this particular trip this time. We have doctors from all over the country that come in for, general practice doctors that see people, and then we have dentists that come in and pull teeth and do cleanings and all of those kind of things. We have nurses that do lab work and do blood draws and stuff, testing for certain things. We have other nurses that do breathing treatments for those that have lung issues. There's a prayer room that each person has a chance to go through. There is a prize room at the end of the whole day where they get to take home things like shoes and toothbrushes and blankets and coloring books and things that are donated so that these families, they also leave with a little gift. There's a sports camp that goes on for the children while the parents are going through that. So there's basketball coaches that come and they help coach them in basketball drills. There's also a kids evangelism team that does a whole kids program during that day. Everything from games to prizes to a message to worship. They do that multiple times a day. We do a morning session, bring everybody through in the morning. Everybody gets a ticket ahead of time. Once those tickets are exhausted, we break for lunch, have a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, and then, I'm not joking, and then we go...
Everybody?
Everybody in our team.
Okay.
Yeah, well, I shouldn't say that. There is a ham and cheese that they also make, but the ham was... I didn't like the color of the ham, so I wasn't playing that, all right? You have certain things you're willing to risk when you're in another country and certain things you're not, all right? So then we do an afternoon session and the whole thing just replays, does it all over again. There's security that are present outside of the gates, inside the grounds, just making sure everybody's staying safe. There's also a person who we affectionately call the potty pirate. He is a wonderful brother in the Lord who lost sight in his eye in Vietnam, so he wears an eye patch. But he went the first year and recognized that people were being taken from our own team, taken into these medical clinics to receive IVs because they weren't drinking. They wouldn't drink water. And the weather we had here is, while we were gone, that hot 95, super humid, that's the weather that's there most of the year. And so when you're walking around all day long, carrying things, setting stuff up, tearing it down, 8-10 hours a day, if you're not drinking, you're in trouble. And so they had people that were going down and needing IVs, and they realized that the reason for that is because they didn't want to use the bathrooms. The bathrooms were just horrific, and so they thought, well, I don't want to use the bathroom, so I'm not going to drink anything. And then you have the other side of the problem. So he took it upon himself to start coming every year and bring supplies to clean the toilets after everybody goes through. He goes in and sprays them down, empties the trash, keeps them nice and clean, flushes it for them. It's one of those, we're one of the few countries that actually flushes toilet paper. Most countries, there's a bucket in the corner and some big thing of water. You dip it in, and that's how you flush your toilet. Some, like in Cuba, you don't even have toilet seats. You just sit right on the bowl. All right, so we're blessed in a lot of ways. But Potty Pirate goes in every year, and he just cleans those bathrooms and keep them as clean as you can possibly get them. There's within reason, right? He's picking up where somebody else has let it go forever. So there's only so much he can do. But at least this way, the team can use the restroom. So it's this well-oiled machine that just happens all week long. It is just a staggering thing to see. And the pastors, if you're wondering what the pastors do, you're going, hey, Pastor Clint, you're not a medical professional. What are you doing? Well, there's two other groups of people. There's a group called transporters, and those are non-medical people that are not plugged in to the actual care of the medical side. And their goal is to partner with the people as they come in and register. So each person has the same transporter that walks them through the clinic, because there's a very certain flow of how it all goes. And so based on their initial intake, whether they were there for general doctor issues or the dentist or whatever, they help them get to those places and get in line, and that person stays with them all the way through the end. So they start to build a relationship with them. You see a lot of them holding the babies. The moms come in, and there's an American there waiting to carry a baby, and the mom's like, yes. Most of them walked to the clinic holding these babies, and so for us to be taking them and holding them while they go through, they're like, hallelujah, somebody's helping. So that's another area of intimate ministry that takes place as you learn names and stories and pray with them, especially the people that are getting dental work done. These people come in there, and some of them, there was one day there was two people at the end of the day lost 17 teeth between two people. They'd have 17 teeth extracted in two people. And some of them are like me. They're like shaking. They're having a nervous breakdown, go to sit in a dentist chair and have teeth extracted. So it is, provides plenty of opportunity for people to pray. And the pastors, there was about 20 pastors in total, maybe not that much, but our job is to also care for the team, because there are things that our group sees when they get there that can get to them. For instance, there was a beautiful little girl that came in on the first day, and she was born normal, but somewhere around 4 or 5 years old, something happened, and she is completely disabled. Her arms are stuck out, her legs are stuck in a position, and she looks like she's just trapped in that body. And they were trying to figure out how to get her through the clinic, and I got involved with that because the grandma came to the back gate and was asking if we could move her through so she didn't stand in line, because the way that she's deformed now, she can't sit up. So they carry her fully erect, and then they have to put her in something that's leaned back to be able to move him around. So we met him at the front gate, and boy, I'll tell you what, when that mom handed her out of the taxi and I saw that little girl's face, I just broke. I just broke. It's this terror that happens in our hearts, people of faith. And it's one of those unexplainable things where to your deepest being, God can just utter a word and all of it goes away for her. And so I had to turn away as the tears just bust from my eyes. I'm like, God, why? Why? She's come years before. We've prayed over this girl, and why? Why won't you just speak the word for her? And she was so precious. Oh my gosh, so precious. You could just see in her, it just broke me. And I'm like, here I am. I'm supposed to be the one tending to the, to the team, the medical staff that are having these problems. And here I am walking away, blubbering and like wrestling with the Lord here for a minute. And so that's what we're there for. We're checking on the team. Hey, are you doing okay? There's times they give the diagnosis and there's just nothing we can do. A gentleman came in there and 98% of his eardrum was gone. It was just the rim that was still there. And the doctor said, there is absolutely no way this heals on its own unless it's the Lord. He said every time, and it has a name, and he was giving me all those names, but he said, I want you to pray. He said, without surgery, in a realistic, moderately modern facility, there's no way this heals. It won't. He'll be deaf. And he had infection in there. And he said, I just want you to pray. There's nothing we can do for this. And so I came over there and I was just praying over the man and weeping, and some other people came around, and we received word about an hour later that man, by the time he got to the prayer room, he had decided it was time for him to give his heart to the Lord. And so in the prayer room, he gave his life to Jesus, and certainly that's the greatest healing miracle anyone can ever receive. But I still believe that his ear is going to be healed. I just walked away from that. I didn't tell that to him, but I spoke that to some of the other people that were praying with me. I said, I just have this confidence that his ear is just going to be healed. I don't know why. I just have this confidence that it's going to be healed. And so we do things like that, and the pastors. And I also check on as many of the doctors and locations around the clinic that I can before we kick it off. Is there anything we can pray for today? A lot of them say, as the week goes on, we're struggling to stay locked in and focused. We're struggling to pay attention. We're feeling all of this stuff. And so there's this multifaceted process where the Holy Spirit can come and just do amazing things throughout the whole week. So it was an incredible trip. Really was. It was exhausting, but it's what it is. And Sunday morning, finished the 5 days of. We finished the 5 days of the clinics, and then I went and did a pastor's conference on Saturday, and they selected me to teach at a youth conference. And I thought, they initially said it was a youth leaders conference. I'm like, okay, well, all right, Lord, what do you want me to speak to these youth leaders of another culture, that do church differently? They don't have buildings like this there. And, well, they do, but the vast majority of the place we were in are like garages. And what do I have to offer them? I'm just wrestling with the Lord on what to say. And we show up there, and there's only about 3 youth pastors and about 10 youth leaders. The rest are actually youth students, just hundreds of them. I'm like, oh, all right, time to adjust. Like, we came prepped and ready to speak to one group of people, and there was a whole different group there. Guys, I'm telling you, something was shaking in that room. I'm sorry if I'm boring you. There's so much that happened. But as we were, because on Sunday I probably won't share as much, I'll let the team share, but we walked in there, and I spoke first in the morning, and we had a couple of speakers in the morning. We had a lunch break. We came back after lunch, And I just had this, as I was standing there waiting to go in, I just had this sense like there was just, I was looking at the roof of the place we were at, and I just didn't have this vision, but I just had this sense like something was going to be pouring down through there. I don't know, it was weird. And I thought, okay, all right, Lord, you're going to pour something out, And we go into the service, and the worship is going, and they get to this song, and the last speaker of the day was the one who was just organizing that for the speaker rotation and all that. He said, hey, I've introduced everybody else. Would you introduce me when worship is done, and we'll just do it that way? I said, yeah, no problem. I got it. Well, they hit this song, and sometimes when you're worshiping with a group of believers in another language, you can still pick up the melody of a song if it's something familiar, and you're like, oh, I know this song. You can sing in your language along with them. This one was totally foreign to me. I'd never heard the song before. And there was just something starting to stir in that room. I'm looking out from the back of the stage, and there's just tears just beginning to fall on people's faces. And people are jumping and, kind of bending over, just weeping in the presence of the Lord. And I'm going, what is? And we could feel the floor just shaking of this room as they were singing this song as an anthem. And I looked over at the interpreter. I said, what are they singing? And he said they're singing about the might and the power of our God. And it was moving the room.
Wow.
And I'm going, all right. So I told the pastor, I said, listen, I need to interrupt this for a minute. Is that okay? I'm not introducing you yet, but I need to interrupt this moment. He said, yeah, you're good. So I got up there, I said, listen, something's shaking in this room right now, and it's not the floor. And, I don't know if you thought God was going to do something like this for you today, but he's here right now, and he's breaking things off of somebody. And so we're going to sing this song again. And I just want you to yield to the presence of the Lord, whatever it is that you came in carrying today, because he is here to do work, and we're going to do it again. And so I turned around, the band took off, and I didn't think it was possible to be louder. It certainly was. It was another 30%. I mean, it went through the roof, and the team of pastors is standing at the back going, this is one of those moments we're not sure we're going to get to the word today. It was, guys, there was a heaviness in that room for these young people that were just crying out to the Lord. And one of the most staggering things for me is typically, as we see in the U.S. church, the majority of the group is women. It was exactly the opposite in this group. It was majority young men in this room. And that's a little different from the trends that we see in the church world. Something was going on, and it was just powerful. Then I got to, we got finished with that. We get up Sunday morning, and we're having breakfast. And that was the day that we have service on the beach as the team, and then people that want to be baptized, we do a mass baptism right there in the ocean, and it's pretty fun. And we'll let some of the other team talk about that. But we're sitting there, and one of the pastors that I had spoke with sat down next to me, and he goes, "Hey, what are you speaking on tonight?" I said, "What? What are you talking about?" I told him I wasn't speaking. He asked me if I wanted to. I said, "No, I'm already doing a devotional. I'm speaking at the youth conference. Let one of the other pastors speak in a service." And he goes, "I'm 99% sure I saw your name on the sign-up sheet over there." Kelly had already gone to sign our group up to go to one of the churches, and she comes back like moments after he says that. She comes back holding this clipboard. She's like, "Honey," and it says right there, "Speaker Clint Walker." I was like, all right, okay, Lord, sometime today I got to go into the secret place, and we got to figure out what I'm going to speak tonight. And so I got to speak in a church Sunday night, and it was just wonderful experience. So, if you've ever had an opportunity to go on a missions trip, you know what I'm talking about. If you haven't, I just want to encourage you, take one of those opportunities and get stretched, because it is definitely a powerful thing when we move out of our comfort zone and all of the little things that we are confronted with in our life that are so comfortable that get taken away. It really does put us in a moment to receive something from the Lord. So I think I'll be speaking my devotional and the message I spoke that Sunday night at some point here in the near future, by virtue of the team's request. You got to preach these in our church, Pastor. I'm like, okay, all right, relax. We'll get there. So anyway, it was a great trip. So thank you so much for everybody praying. And sorry I didn't record a video to send home this year. Tried to do that last year, but this time I just thought, I'm leaving my phone in the room. I don't want the distraction of the tech. I just want to be present in the moment and be paying attention to what God wants. So it was a great time. All right, Pastor Ray, I did say earlier when we started, thank you for teaching a couple weeks ago. Love having you in the rotation. We love hearing God use you, and so I appreciate that. Thank you so much. All right, we are picking up the last part of chapter 24 tonight in the book of Proverbs. All right? It's a little bit shorter of a study tonight, which is why I didn't feel the rush to move really fast through my story there. Let's see. Yeah, so we'll be finishing up. We'll be starting in verse 23, and we'll finish out chapter 24 tonight. All right. Let's read it all through. It's a short portion. We haven't been reading large portions of this. We've been highlighting scriptures and themes as the writers have uncovered them, okay, and brought them to light. But since this is a shorter passage, let's split this in half. All right, let's have somebody read 23 to 29, right? And then we'll have somebody else read 30 to 34, all right? And once again, if you're going to read, please read loud enough for us to hear you and the microphones to pick you up. Ralph, you got the first one?
Yeah.
Okay. Who's got second? 30 to 34. Anybody want to take it? Larry? Okay, gotcha. All right, Ralph.
The
Run
heading
with
is called Further Sayings of the Wise. These are sayings of the wise. To show partiality in judging is not good. Whoever says to the guilty, you are innocent, peoples will curse him and nations denounce him. But it will go well with those who are convict the guilty, and rich blessing will come upon them. An honest answer is like a kiss on the lips. Finish your outdoor work and get the fields ready. After that, build your house. Do not testify against your neighbor without cause, or use your lips to deceive. Do not say, I'll do him as he has done to me.
I went by the field of the lazy man, in the vineyard of the man devoid of understanding. And there it was, all overgrown with thorns. Its surface was covered with nettles. Its stone wall was broken down. When I saw it, I considered it well. I looked on it and received instruction. A little sleep, a little slumber, a little folding of the hands to rest. So shall your poverty come like a prowler, and your need like an armed man.
All right.
There was one part that
There was one line left. Go ahead,
Sorry.
Ralph. It's okay.
I'll pay that man back for what he did.
That's right. Yep. Thank you, Ralph.
You're
Thank you,
welcome.
Larry. All right. So let's see. There's a fable from Aesop's Fables about the grasshopper and the ant. I don't know if you've ever read Aesop's Fables. It's a short one. But essentially, the grasshopper is playing a merry tune on his fiddle as he watched the autumn sun rise and bring another bright and cheerful day. What a wonderful life is this, thought the grasshopper. He rejoiced in the brilliant colors of fall and danced a happy little dance. Best be storing up some food, remarked a busy little ant who hurried by the grasshopper. The ant had his hands full, carrying grain to his hill. It'll be winter soon. You won't feel like dancing then, the ant said. The ant said, since he was always such a party spoiler. "Oh, go on, ant, I've got plenty of time," crowded the grasshopper as he danced a circle around his busy little friend. "Well, don't say I didn't warn you," returned the ant, "and don't come crying to me when you get hungry." The grasshopper laughed scornfully and sang his way home, laughing at the memory of the ant, so busy, so glum, so miserable. Winter, in fact, did come, as the ant had said. The grasshopper hurried in panic to gather what remaining food he could find, but it was not enough. All his glee left him with the realization that the ant's advice, dull as it was at the time, was wise. His food had run out, and he starved. This story, as I alluded to a moment ago, is based on Aesop's fables, which highlights one idea: that the hardworking person rejoices after the work is done, and that the lazy person suffers when responsibilities are neglected. A similar contrast is made here in the end of chapter 24. So, the writer here presents a couple aspects that we're going to look at tonight. The first one is how to become blessed, and the other one is how to become poor. All right, so we're going to start with how to become blessed. As believers, the goal of our lives should be to honor God, right? Not only honor God in our actions and honor God in the worship that we offer and the prayer that we pray and the devotion we give Him, but also to honor God in how we treat people. Of course, it's a wonderful thing to be blessed as well, okay? So here in Proverbs 24, in this last section, we're going to see some ways that we can become blessed in our lives. So let's look at verse 23, 24, 25, 26, and 27. If you're used to this flow, you recognize we're going to pull one of these at a time. I'm going to ask you a question. We're going to unpack what we see there in that particular text based on the question, all right? So let's take verse 23. I'll read it out for you. "These also are the sayings of the wise. To show partiality in judging is not good. So how should the righteous treat others?" Say it nice and loud.
With respect.
There you go. I can hear you. You have a voice. Use it. Good. With respect.
Without partiality.
Without partiality. With respect and without partiality. All right, what does partiality mean?
It means to favor one person over another.
Favor one person over another. How do we do that?
Say maybe one person is rich and they're wearing nice clothes and they got a good job and they've got upstanding in the church and you favor them because they're uppity, but this low person who is wearing holes in their jeans and just don't have no clothes and they don't have a job and partiality.
Okay. Now, why is partiality such a thing that opposes God's design for our life? Why is that in opposition to God's design?
I think it's because he's so much higher than us, and for him to look down and see one class of people looking down on another, he could do that easily, but he doesn't.
Okay.
So.
And by the way, you're doing a great job, but just because I pose a follow-up question doesn't mean that you're the one that has to answer it. I'm just rolling off of what you're saying.
Okay.
You don't have to feel like you have to answer all of my subsequent questions. That's for the group. Okay, Ralph?
Okay.
So, God looks at the whole person.
Mm-hmm.
So He doesn't see partiality. He sees the whole.
Okay.
So therefore, we are to focus on the whole and get rid of the partiality within our hearts. Because He sees them, He sees what we don't see.
Mm-hmm.
he sees the heart. And if we want to be like Christ, we see the heart.
That's good. That's good. Now that reflects a main theme that we see throughout Scripture, and that is the value God places on human life.
Yeah.
Right? That value is not dictated by what we can bring.
Yeah.
It's not dictated by what we have. It's not dictated by any of those things. It's dictated because we bear the image of God. It's dictated because He is the author of life. We carry upon us the marks of His creation. Albeit through His creative order, we still bear the marks of our creative God. And therefore, we all have the same value, right? But when we choose partiality, we actually become in opposition to that value of life. Whether we do it to an extreme or to a little, we've actually lessened the value of a person by using partiality. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. All right, so the righteous, the people walking in the ways of the Lord, should treat others without partiality. So that's great. All right, second one, verse 24. Whoever says to the guilty, "You are innocent," will be cursed by peoples and denounced by nations. How do the wicked twist the truth?
Lying lips.
By their lips, okay?
Lying lips.
Say that again.
Lying lips.
Lying lips. Lying lips, okay? They twist the truth with lying lips. What else?
When they celebrate something that's evil.
When they celebrate something that's evil, right? And even take that one step further, they don't just celebrate it. What do?
They dance in the streets. They what?
Dance in the streets. They rejoice at it. What else?
Say it's good.
They say it's good. If they're declaring somebody innocent, they're saying they've done no wrong. They're saying what you've done is okay. It's good. Right? So, if the wicked twist the truth with lying lips, declaring something that's wicked as good, this becomes an issue. Now, we could all take a step back and look around our society today, and we could see this happening at a regular basis. It's all around us. But that right there should be a point for us to recognize. If we want to be people that represent our King, who live a blessed life by walking in the ways of God, then we too should be a people who refuse to call the wicked things good.
Amen.
It may marginalize us. In fact, it will. It will cause us to look like we're lunatics at times because we're hanging on to truth. God forbid. But the reality is, righteous people should be people who do not twist the truth.
In 25, I'll just read it. It says, "But it will go well with those who convict the guilty, and rich blessing will come upon them." So we're the guilty ones.
Not in this case.
Not in this case?
Not in this case, we're not the guilty ones, because if we're the ones pursuing righteousness, if we're the ones who are hungering for the righteousness that Proverbs is encouraging us to do so,
Okay.
then we would take the other view.
I misread it.
No, it's okay. But what that means is, the righteous, that's the next question. How do the righteous receive a blessing? The righteous, if we're aiming to be righteous, we receive that blessing when we do what? When we actually convict the guilty. We refuse to go along with the false narrative. We stand on truth, and we do actually call wrong, wrong, and wicked, wicked, and we convict the guilty. That is a way that the righteous receive a blessing. Now, that blessing may not be from this world.
Right.
That blessing is our concern is more about the blessing of God than the blessing of man.
Right.
And in this case, as people who are hungry for righteousness, we're pursuing the blessing of God.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay? So, let's move on to verse 26. Here's the next question. An honest answer is like a kiss on the lips. This one seems a little like, what? All right, we got a little background information here in a second, but what kind of speaking will bless another person?
Honest, truthful.
Truthful, honest, It does us no good to try to soften the blow of truth by lying to someone. That does not bless them. Truth blesses people. In fact, that's what Jesus told us. If you truly love somebody, you'll tell them the truth. It may be hard to receive, and it might be sharp, but better for you to tell them the truth in love than to lie to them and let them continue on a path that leads to destruction, right? So the speaking that will bless another person is honesty. All right, now let's talk about this kiss on the lips. All right? Kissing the mouth for ancient Hebrews primarily indicated affection or respect among close relatives or friends. This also meant a great feeling of gratitude or joy as a result of someone else's deed. So in ancient Hebrew culture, you would kiss someone on the lips if you were had a deep affection and respect for them, or if gratitude was welling up in you as a result of something they did for you. So this was used in a couple different ways, right? So now put that back in context with truth, right? With an honest answer is like the gratitude welling up within us, the deep affection and respect, the joy as a result of somebody else's deed. So these are things that we miss sometimes, because a statement like that we think about in our Western culture. And this is why Bible study and context and getting into the culture of what was happening when the writers were writing it helps us, because we don't see people walking around kissing each other on the lips. Could you imagine that? Instead of a handshake on Sunday morning, you're so happy to see your brother in Christ, you just plant a big old one on his lips?
Forget the mask, huh?
Boy, now all of a sudden we're the weird church. Nobody's going there. All right, it's the truth. So we miss that context, is what I'm saying. So we don't understand why honesty is equated that way. But when you put it back in the culture that this writer was writing from, you understand that it's an expression of deep affection and joy and respect and admiration for somebody, to give them honesty, to give them truth. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
As righteous people, if any of you come and kiss me on the lips, bless the Lord, all right? But I'd rather have honesty in our culture, all right? But you see the connection now. I think my wife would agree too, right? Now, there is a place for the holy kiss of Scripture, right? Now, just avoid this area right here, okay? I'm all right if you want to put one on the cheek, okay? All right, so that's a connection to culture that we would miss. That's why study is important, all right? Now, verse 27. Put your outdoor work in order and get your fields ready. After that, build your house. How should righteous people do their work?
Do it with integrity.
Integrity? Do it with integrity. We should, absolutely. What else?
Get your fields ready.
Okay, one at a time. Go ahead.
Get your fields ready and then build your house. Make sure everything's ready and then count your cost.
Get your fields ready, you count your cost, and then build your house, which then leads into Larry's statement. Go ahead.
Planned and thoughtful.
Planned and thoughtful, right? We're not just stumbling through with no direction. We're working with a purpose. We're working with a plan. Okay? Who was it in the Old Testament that dug their wells before they even built their house? Does anybody remember?
Jacob.
I don't remember. Who was it?
I think it was Isaac.
Was it Isaac? They dug the well, then built their home, right? It's an orderly thing. They needed the water, right? You go out and you just start building a house without water. It's like the people I was just talking about who didn't want to drink, though we were working 8-10 hours a day and we didn't have water, right? So there's an order, there's a process, there's thinking through. Go ahead.
I think today it's also, a lot of utilitarians founded this country,
Mm.
and they worked hard. And now that's kind of maybe out of vogue. But this is saying be utilitarian, not pleasure seeking, right? The pleasure seeker is like, I gotta have a good bed, I have to get out of the wind, I have to, all that, and they're saying, look, that's not gonna pay you for next year. You're not gonna be here next year.
Yeah.
If all you worry about is your pleasure today. You got some plowing, planting, weeding to do to make the lifetime work. Then you can build your house. And a lot of us want to build our house first and look, what a great house I have. And like, oh, it's going to be gone next year because you're not going to have any money.
That's good. And that literally connects back to the fable at the beginning, the grasshopper and the ant, right? The ant was doing the work up front so they could rest on the backside, and the grasshopper wanted to do the dancing and the rejoicing, but he hadn't done the work. And it came back and bit him. That's what you're talking about. Yeah, absolutely. There is value in hard work. And I do think, like Pastor Ray said, some of that perspective is being lost in our world today. This country was built on people that hunkered down. I don't know if you've ever seen those. I'm sorry, I feel a little ADD. I don't know if you've ever seen those pictures of the high steel workers of New York from back in like the early 1900s. They're sitting on this steel hundreds of feet from the ground. No OSHA then. No tie-offs anywhere. They got their metal lunchbox sitting next to them, their feet dangling off of this I-beam, and they're just taking a lunch break. I'm like, dear goodness. Like, there was some rugged people that built the infrastructures that we enjoy today. And unfortunately, I feel like this idea of hard work is kind of being lost. But it's something we, as people of righteousness, people who are pursuing God, can't neglect. There is a reality to hard work and it producing the right order of things in our life that the writer of Proverbs is saying it's wise. This is wise. It brings blessing to work this way. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. The idea of blessing in the book of Proverbs is expressed in two Hebrew words, barak and asher. Together, they refer to the positive state of one who's received favor, primarily from the Lord, as well as to specific acts of goodwill or gifts received, again, from the Lord. Blessing then includes the ideas of general prosperity, happiness, and also specific acts or gifts one receives or gives, and the human acts of pronouncing blessing upon God or others. So the idea of blessing here is a holistic picture of blessing. It's blessing of provision, it's blessing of gifts, it's blessing of health, it's blessing of strength, and it's blessing from the Lord. It's also blessing others, all right? So there's this depth of Hebrew blessing that's wrapped up in the Proverbs writer's admonition here, to go seek the blessing of the Lord, to walk in a way that receives the blessing of the Lord. And in so doing, you also what? Bless other people. Okay? If we order that work right in our lives, and we order the way we speak to people, and we tell them honestly, and we don't cover up wickedness, but we call it out, and we convict the guilty, and we live that way, what happens? We become a blessing to those around us. We become a person people like to be around. Why? Because we tell the truth and it's received warmly, or maybe not so much at the time, but somebody eventually, is respecting of that honesty. We work hard so that allows me to lend to somebody if they're in need. And so through this idea of the hardworking, righteous people that do things with wisdom, we actually find the sustaining element of a society and of a culture that we can lean on one another. We can support one another. But if we're all chasing our own selfish things, we're not willing to do things the right way, and we walk off into wickedness, we become isolated. And that process begins to break down. So there's wisdom here, obviously, as we look in the book of Proverbs, chapter 24. All right? So that's one way to become blessed. Now let's look at how we become poor. The ancient Hebrews realized that hard work produced good harvests, right? Ironically, though, we're going to face this here. We're going to talk about it at the end of chapter 24. when they talk about a little sleep, a little slumber, a little folding of the hands. Ironically, we still do need rest to recharge, right? So we'll cover that when we get there. These two things are a little bit different, all right? For instance, when the people of Israel were taken into captivity in Babylon for 70 years, the Lord declared through Jeremiah that those 70 years were a direct result of them not giving the land the Sabbath rest that he called them to give it. Yeah, they worked it hard, but they never gave it that Sabbath year rest to let the soil regenerate, to let it regather its nutrients. And so Jeremiah says this is literally one of the reasons you're being taken from the land, so the land can have the rest you never gave it. Right? So there is this element that if we're going to continue to be hardworking, righteous people, that there is an element of productive rest, but not lazy rest. Does that make sense? We'll get there in just a minute. So even though they recognized the hard work producing good harvests, they also believed that lazy, irresponsible people reap poverty and trouble. So here we go again. Let's look at these last few verses with some questions. Verse 30. I went past the field of a sluggard, past the vineyard of someone who has no sense. What does a lazy person lack?
They lack judgment.
Sense, judgment. All right, how would that contribute to a downfall of a lazy person? How would that contribute to them becoming poor?
Their crops are down.
Say it again.
The crops are down and then they're not taking care of them.
Crops are down, they're not taking care of them.
They just aren't doing anything.
They're not doing anything.
They're not doing anything.
They don't have they're lacking the sense to recognize what's coming upon them because they're just not doing anything. All right, what else? Any other reason why lacking sense contributes to them becoming poor? Larry?
Drive and motivation.
They lack the drive and motivation and the sense to recognize the need for it. Okay? These are all great answers. But again, these are answers we can look around and we can see people in our lives that are okay living in some of these places. You know, there is, I remember as a teenager, and there are formative moments as we're growing through those years where I think our brains receive the much needed molding in those processes where it can keep us from walking down a life of laziness, or it can produce within us these ruts of doing hard things and being disciplined. I told somebody the other day that choosing to do the hard things creates ruts of toughness in our character that allow us, when tough times come, to be able to dig down and press through. But if we always avoid the tough thing, all we are is just a soft person. We're easily crushed by scenario and challenge and circumstance. But not avoiding the difficulty, not avoiding the difficult things, creates within us a metal, M-E-T-T-L-E, a metal that's hard and tough and resilient. Okay? Ralph.
In November of last year, I was in my car driving home from my job, and I was working at Portillo's. Short story. Heather and I didn't have much money at the time. She couldn't work much because of her disability. And I felt like, okay, I'm doing what I'm doing because it's comfortable for me. But what I started to realize was that my decisions were causing problems. And it was because I was wanting to go my own way and not allow God to open up the door for me. And so I was the lazy person. And all of this was happening to me, and it was affecting Heather. And I was in my car, I was in the parking lot before I went into the apartment. And I just said to the Lord, look, I don't know what to do. And I said to him, I give up, but I didn't want to give up being his servant and having an open mind with the change in direction. I just basically said, Lord, look, things are crashing in our lives. It's my fault, because I'm the leader. You've called me to be a leader in this relationship and in this marriage. I'm done doing it myself. I give you everything we're dealing with. And some weeks later, I changed my job. It was kind of something that the Lord forced. So I got hired at Walmart. And I'm telling you, since then, and with Heather's situation too, that changed. But long story short, our lives are slowly turning around. And it is because we are choosing to obey him.
That's good.
And at the end of the day, I was doing what was comfortable for me. God wanted me to follow him. So I was that lazy person. I was that lazy person. Now I'm a free spirit. I'm a free spirit. There's the nerds and there's the free spirit people, like Dave Ramsey says.
Mm-hmm.
I'm the free spirit. But God is continuing to bless us because we're choosing to follow him.
That's good.
Does that make any sense?
Yeah,
to you?
yeah.
So
That's good.
when I said to the Lord, look, I give up, I didn't give up the will
Sure.
to follow him. I just said, Lord, look, I give up. I can't handle this right now.
Yeah, sure.
Help me to do what you want me to do.
Yeah. So you made a shift.
I made a shift.
You shifted your focus to his ways, and he started to bless. And he started to shift some things for you.
A little bit at a time.
Hey, you know, every one of those moments is another breath of fresh air. Like, okay, we're getting somewhere. Thank you, Jesus. Another moment, another blessing. Right? That's what the writer of Proverbs is talking about. It's taking the Lord's path, not ours. It's choosing the path of righteousness and obedience to him that produce the blessing, that bring those things into our life that we need. And so that's great testimony right here in the middle of this. All right, verse 31. It says, thorns had come up everywhere, the ground was covered with weeds, and the stone wall was in ruins. So what did the lazy person's field look like?
Overgrown and very not well kept.
Absolutely. Overgrown, not well kept. You could tell. I mean, you can tell that going through your neighborhood. Like you see the pristine lawn that's like Sherlin's probably. Perfect, nice lines, no weeds. It looks great. You go a few houses down and there's somebody who hasn't mowed it all summer yet. It's just all over the place. You're like, just mow your yard, right? You can see. Now, we don't know the reasons, obviously, so it wouldn't be fair to pigeonhole somebody in this case. But that's kind of the imagery we're getting here. That lazy person's field is overgrown. It's unkempt. There's weeds everywhere. There's thorns growing up. Nothing of value is going to grow there. Pastor Ray.
Maybe a better modern analogy is the person that doesn't seem to get things done on time at work, misses meetings, doesn't know what to do next, and doesn't ask when they don't know. Right, because, I mean, this is an agrarian example.
Correct.
Right? So that
Yeah.
land, that's your vocation, that's your income. And, I think also we need to kind of think about that when we're moving this.
Yeah, how do we translate this
into
to
our
today?
culture too,
Yep.
is that, so this is somebody that maybe has a really well-kept yard and house, because they're never thinking about how to do their work. They're always like, oh, dude, it's time to go. Wait, this is lunchtime. I'm not doing anything. Or, you know, I wouldn't want to give somebody exactly 8 hours of work for 8 hours of pay. I got to get it down to 7:55 or something, right? Right? They're always cutting corners in that way, and they're not, you know. I had a friend who was a baker and owned his own bakery, right? So he would get up really early, do the work. We would go to like a Burger King, and it closes at 10 o'clock, and it's 9:50, and we pull up, and they got a little sign like, we're closed. And he's like, wow, I wonder if their boss knows. You know, it's like, he's like, I'd be really mad if the people I hired to work for me, you know, and there was another car behind us too, you know, we're like, you know, maybe it was slow for 3 hours. I don't know what was going on. Maybe the shake machine was down. I don't know. But the way they chose to deal with it was sort of, I think, the analogy to the messed up grounds and all that stuff. They're just going back to the house again that they built before they did the grounds.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great analogy. So, go ahead, Jennifer.
In that respect, I mean, a lot of people these days in today's society want somebody else to take care of them.
It's true.
They do. You mean, look at the work in the meetings and everything else. They don't do their work. They figure somebody else will pick it up.
Well, you know, when I worked at the gas station at Thornton's, that's what it was, right? And I'm not trying to put anything on a different generation, but there were certain age groups of people there that just knew I'd walk in and couldn't handle it, and I would just do the job. I would do it the way it was supposed to be done, and they were fine. Like, we'll just leave it. He'll do it later. And there was this total disconnect of, you know, a good pride in what they were doing with their hands, you know, and it showed every time I showed up. So yeah, they just expected somebody else will do this instead of taking that personal ownership and that hardworking mentality. It's all over.
When I was at the plywood mill, the two were, not my job, and I don't get paid enough for this bleep.
Well,
and it's like, well, you know, you're paid to do this, whatever bleep happens.
yeah.
You need to pick up the floor, you know, when the wood veneer falls on the floor, you got to pick it up. Nobody's going to make any plywood otherwise.
Yeah.
You need to not drive over it with your forklift, and so on and so on. But you know, and the foreman, I'm sure, are having meetings between each other about, your shift left all this crap for me.
Right.
That better not happen again, right? All that kind of, and so that's why they would have things like who puts out the most wood gets more, you know, gets a bonus, but you got to watch out, because then they'll put out a lot of wood, but then they won't clean anything up, and so the next group can't do it. So they're trying to find ways to kind of incentivize you, but sooner or later the unwise can find any reason at all to go, you know, I'm not gonna put myself out for this.
Yeah.
Either I'm not getting paid enough, or it should be somebody else's job.
Right.
And sometimes it just make the place run better, whether it's your job or not.
Right. Just take some ownership for it. Yeah, I agree.
Another aspect is the outside public loses respect. You know, like, if an organization, like a restaurant, says it's closing at 3:30, and then they put up a sign saying the kitchen closes at 3, but they are closing at 3:30, you just kind of lose a little bit of respect, because it's like,
Yeah.
all right, why are you saying you're open till 3:30 if you're not able to get food
Yeah.
after 3, you know?
Right. So there's far-reaching consequences to the lack of that personal ownership and motivation to work hard. It really is. Now, closing out chapter 24 here, in 32 through 34, the writer of this proverb says, I applied my heart to what I observed and learned a lesson from what I saw. You know, this is a wonderful prior saying to a phrase that I've often quoted, right? A smart person learns from what? Their own mistakes. But a wise person learns from what? The mistakes of another. This is literally what he's saying. He's watching this happen, and he's learning and applying what he's seeing. Okay? And he says in verse 33, A little sleep, a little slumber, a little folding of the hands to rest. And poverty will come on you like a thief, and scarcity like an armed man. What lesson do you think he's talking about here that he's learned? Or whoever the writer is.
Maybe that you reap the consequences of what you do.
Reap the consequences of what you do. Yeah, you don't want to work hard. Don't expect a good crop to come into your storehouse. Right? Farmers have that happens to farmers all the time.
Right.
You know, if they sow the wrong thing or they wait too long. I've been watching that Clarkson Farms on, I'm hooked on that stinking show. Thanks, Pastor Ray. He was telling me, and now I can't stop watching it. There's such specific things they have to do, and sometimes it's in the middle of the night. Like, you got to get up and get out of bed and go take care of something, and if they choose not to, either the crop's not going to come in or that baby's going to die and their cattle's not going to reproduce the way they should. I mean, it's crazy, but, you know, if they're not paying attention to those details, they can't expect the benefits to come in. That hard work, right? What else? What's another lesson?
I think a little sleep, a little slumber, like maybe when you're doing those things, it doesn't feel so bad. You're just doing a little here, a little there, taking a little rest.
That's good.
And then suddenly it's wham, right in your face.
You know, that's funny you say it like that because I've never seen it that way. I've never seen it as a little here, a little there, a little here, a little there. I've always read it as a little, like in total, like, you know, out of this many hours, you know, I'm just gonna rest for this hour. But it actually makes more sense to me because that irritates me like nobody else. Kind of like my wife, God bless her, babe, if you're watching this. She is an ADD cleaner. All right, she'll start cleaning the living room and she'll pick something up to go put it away, and then she'll go to the laundry room and she'll go, well, this shelf needs to be organized. And then she'll put it down, she'll rip everything off the shelf, and she'll start organizing the shelf, and then she'll see something that needs to go to the room, and she'll go up to the room and she'll go, I gotta clear off my dresser. And then she just starts clearing off her dresser and cleaning all this stuff up. And I come in, I'm like you did 2 minutes on the living room, that room's not done. Go to the laundry room, all the shelves are ripped apart. She's like, man, I've been cleaning all day. I'm like, you have? Like, I'm the one that I'm like, I lock in, I'm like, finish this, then we'll breathe. Like, get...
My house tonight.
Huh?
You can sleep in my house.
Thank you, Pastor Ray.
Doors locked when you get home.
I know you got a nice couch. I'll bring my pillow. But I'm the one, I just can't think that way. I'm like, for me, even if it's taking all day, if one room's done, I have a place I can go and go, we're making headway. But if everything's in disarray, I can't work that way. She can, but I can't, right? But that idea of the little rest for me is like that staggered through the day, like, oh, all right, I'm not quite done here, but I'm going to have this popsicle and I'm going to sit here and drift off to sleep for a few minutes, and before long, 8 hours is gone and you haven't even gotten one full thing done, right? That makes a lot more sense, Christy, to think of it that way, a little sleep, a little slumber.
How do you know about my wife popsicle breaks?
Oh, hey, listen, I'm not trying to be prophetic. Blame that on the Lord, all right?
Yeah, I know.
So also I think it's part of like a teaching you'll see throughout Scripture, a lot through here, right? Line upon line, precept upon precept, talking about how you grow into the wisdom of the law of the Lord, right? And that too is saying just do a little, but then sort of hidden in there, that whole thing about let the wise read this and gain wisdom, not let the fool read this and gain wisdom.
That's true.
Is seeing that really it's talking about if this is what characterizes you, always got to have a little rest, always got to have a little, it's an agrarian example again, right? Just like on Clarkson's Farm. If the pigs are birthing, then you better be out there because mom is going to roll on that baby.
That's right. There is no time for rest.
You got to get out there and take care. Like, I'm sure that pig is an example of the fool too, right?
Sure.
She's just going to roll on that baby.
Yeah.
So you got to get out there and take care of some business, or you're going to just have a bunch of dead piglets. And it doesn't matter that you didn't get enough sleep that night or the night before or the night before. Now's the day to do that. And then there'll be a time to rest, right?
Right. Right.
Whereas maybe in our culture, we need to think a little bit more about how am I planning Sabbath into my life? Because there's people that'll make you work 8 hours a day, 8 days a week.
Right.
right? And you've got to figure out how am I gonna do those, to have all the little things all running at some pace.
Yeah.
I need to get the word in my life. But also there's people that spend so much time getting the word in their life, they never get any life to talk to anybody else about this word,
Yeah,
right?
right.
It's just all study and no living it.
Yeah.
And I don't mean to decrement, you gotta read it, you gotta get it in you, but I gotta have all those things working, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
I've gotta be a witness, but I've also gotta listen and let my brother and sister be a witness.
That's good.
Maybe even push them to be a witness, depends
Yeah.
on what my current relationship is at that time, right? So all
Yeah.
these, I think a lot of times you read that about, a little saving here, a little saving there, and you'll have your nest egg. That's also in Proverbs,
Sure.
right? So we just need to remember to keep doing all those things.
That's good.
We're in such an extreme culture. They're like, oh, well, only certain people can get rich, and they're gonna get uber rich.
Right.
And so you should just quit the game. And it's like, well, no, because I can still provide for my family even if I'm never in the top half, let alone the top 1%.
Right.
I can still do things to provide for my family.
That's right.
And I can still do things to not be dependent on others who maybe could be using their income in another way
Sure.
rather than supporting me, right?
Sure.
I think that's another one of these lessons that if,
Yep.
as you read more and more of these verses kind of should come through too. Like you gotta keep all this stuff rolling.
Yep. Yeah, I agree. 100%. And there's two things that I want to say in response to that. I don't know if this is the best way to state this, but stereotypically, the Hebrew people, especially in the U.S., are stereotypically good with money. They own a lot of businesses. They tend to do well with their finances. I recognize that's a large grouping, and I'm sure there's some that just really struggle like others, but by far and wide, they seem to have an angle on what this is, and I think it's because they take these things literally. They apply these things in their life. These are kingdom principles that they put into play. Whether they're walking with Jesus or not, they're listening to wisdom and they're using it, and it does, over time, it does bring about this growth in this process, right? And the second thing I was going to say is, a little sleep, a little slumber. I was actually fighting this today, right? We got into town. We got home about 2 a.m. last night, and by the time you lay down and fall asleep, it's almost 3. Get everything done, and I was up about 6 a.m. and I'm like, I just don't feel like I'm ready. So I laid back down for a little bit. About 9 o'clock, I thought, all right, I got it. That's it. I can't keep staying here. So I come up to the church and I'm working. About 2 o'clock, I'm just feeling it. I'm going, well, I can either just keep pushing through and just stay through like most days on Wednesdays, or I can go home and try to let my brain rest a little bit for tonight. Now, the trade-off is this was a valuable rest moment for me, because not only did that minor Sabbath for me allow my brain to rest a little bit more, so tonight I was actually more able to do what God's called me to do, but it also illustrated my trust in the Lord that, God, whatever I didn't get done today, I still trust into your hands. Like, I don't have to be on 24/7, God. I can trust this stuff to you and rest and know that you're still in control of those things, which is a powerful perspective on Sabbath, by the way. If we can never take a Sabbath, then do we ever trust God to run the world when we're not active? That's a real element of trust and faith. So today I was able to kind of partake in a little bit of the slumber, not in a lazy way, but a restorative way that allowed me to be able to be focused tonight. So I'm thankful for those wisdom moments to know, all right, the pig's not being born right now. I can take a breather and be ready for the next season. So was a good illustration. Ralph and then Larry.
I had a friend in college named Dr. Marva Dawn, and she was a professor and a preacher. I was up in Minnesota and she was teaching a class at Mount Carmel, and she was talking about the Sabbath. And what she said was basically this. What would it look like if you could devote one day where you do absolutely no work and discover for the first time that the world is sustained by God's energy and not yours?
Yeah. Yep.
And so the Sabbath, as she taught us at this seminar, she's like, it was basically a community day
Mm-hmm.
where you would go and be with your family, your church family too, and then you could have like a potluck or a barbecue or just, it's a community day. And so she was bringing that as an example of how this is what the Sabbath looks like.
That's good.
So
That's good.
I'll always remember that from
That's
her.
a powerful point, right? I like that. Thank you for sharing.
But the world is sustained by God's
That's
energy
right.
and not yours.
It is. That's good. It's a good reminder for all of us. Larry, last thought, because we're a few minutes over.
I think the whole section that we covered tonight, both in gives the flip-flop of internal character. You know, the levels of pride, integrity, the drive for excellence in the first part, whereas the second part, you know, the lack of character, poor judgment is being exuded. You know, they don't care, they don't give a flip. They're basically looking at it from, you know, whatever, come what may.
Yeah.
You know, they have no internal drive. They don't have the integrity to see things through to the end. They obviously don't have that character of, you know, driving for and excelling for excellence in what they do. So basically, this whole last 8, 10, 12 scriptures deals with the different sides of character, the positive and then the negative.
Yep. Yep. That's good. That's that's the contrast we actually see throughout all of Proverbs. And that's why it's such a wise thing, because not only does he give the words of wisdom, but he contrasts it by the opposing effect for those who reject it. And so it's a powerful book for us to study. I'm excited we are. I love it. It's one of those powerful, meaningful things in my life to just continue to ingest the wisdom. All right, so thanks everybody for coming out tonight. Thanks for those of you who joined us online. Look forward to seeing everybody this weekend.